Right, key tank for Iron Horse Raid Boss 4. Key tank is arguably the most important role on Boss 4, as it is pretty much the pace setter. If you don't have a key tank, you're gonna have a bad time. Now, hopefully you don't have an absolute troll like unknown Spot in your team who takes the key away from me in the first rotation. However, this does also kind of serve to highlight that for the first rotation, although key tank is nice, it's not exactly required, simply because there's not going to be a lot going on the map. It is literally just ads and snipers. Getting the first key in is really simple. The keys drop from the chungas, which hopefully your DPS will have taken care of. Run over, pick up the key, stand in the circle. When it hits 100%, it should say at some point to interact with the console. You can also get an audio cue by there being like an alarm sound going off. This is when you interact. The cannon or the turret will then do its thing. You then run off and then bully the next chunga. I'd recommend a Ravenous with AR for this, simply just because while you're running around like a lunatic, Ravenous is going to be able to give you bonus armor stacks to help keep you alive, despite the fact that you are pretty tanky, and ARs do have some seriously good DPS. Once you've killed the chunga, these are the only chungas in the game that weirdly for some dumb reason have armor rather than armor plating. But once you've killed the chunga, you head over and you just start putting keys in. While you are putting the key in, you cannot move. That's literally it. And then when it hits 100%, you'll get a visual as well as an audio cue to put the key in, and then you just, run around like a lunatic. One thing to be wary of is when you are key tank, if you keep getting in and out of the circle, you will spawn lots and lots of snipers, which is a very good way to get your team dead. So 100% don't recommend. Hopefully you will have a little bit of help dealing with the chungas, just because of where you're quite tanky and you're spec'd into being quite tanky. You don't really do a lot of damage, so chungas can be a problem. However, this is where Foundry comes in absolutely beautifully. If you just keep rotating between taking damage between your armor and your shield, you are functionally immortal. You can just, have a good time. I would recommend, because you'll be running the perfect Vanguard chest, recommend keeping an eye on the right hand side for your friends and proccing Vanguard when it's needed, not really when just willy-nilly. Try and save it for when you need it or when an ally needs it. If you just start spamming it, chances are you're actually going to be more of a detriment to your team than an actual help. First rotation is really simple. It is just, there'll be a chunga on the ground as soon as you open the door, kill him, grab the keys, and then the chunga will come out of the left side carriage where I'm running now. Then the next chunga will come out of the right side carriage, and then finally a chunga from the left side carriage, which is this one here. So there will be a total of 3 chunga spawns, left, right, left, but there's also one at the start when you actually first enter the area. They are your 4 keys for phase 1. Literally nothing changes throughout. Hopefully your team should be on top of the ads. You're not really going to need healing because you're running Foundry, and the stagger tank is just going to be stood there looking pretty. Overall mechanic of phase 1 is entirely really up to you. You are the driving force. The quicker you can get those keys and get them in, the quicker your team can go on to the next phase. Obviously this will be slightly held back by the rapidity of the RPG spawns, just because after you've destroyed the shielding for the 4 mortars, 4 keys, 4 bits of shielding on the mortars, that's what the minigun is shooting. Obviously your team has to destroy the mortars as we go along. So although this is my 4th and final key, we still have a little bit of work to do on the mortars. Once your 4th key is in, you don't have to do this, but this is what I like to do. I just like to run around the middle, simply just because where you're then going to be the closest thing to the enemies, they will tend to aggro on you first. This is if your team is a little bit behind on the mortars. But if you run around in the middle, enemies will aggro to you. It means they're going to take less aggro, and due to the fact that you're running Foundry and are really tanky, you are essentially the bulwark of the team. Once you're all good to go and head into the middle, the tunnel area, you are going to be the front of the conga line with your shield up. Once you see that the missiles have stopped dropping, you can make your way forward. Some people like to just run like I do, screw my team. Others will aim and move forward. This is a slower moving forward pace, but it does give your team more cover. In phase 2, you have nothing to do. There is no key tank in phase 2 or phase 3. It is just run around like a lunatic, run into doors, have a good time, maybe cuddle a panda. I don't know. But yeah, in phases 1, there's a key tank. In phases 4, key tank. In phases 2 and 3, yeah, not so much. As such, this is the perfect opportunity to go over the build that I use for key tank. We have 4-piece foundry, all rolled to armor regen and protection from elite mods. For the chest, we're going to run Point Man for perfect Vanguard with a hazard protection roll, armor regen roll, and protection from elite mod, like I said, and a Bellstone backpack giving us the 1% armor regen roll, hazard protection roll, protection from elites mod, but the most important thing here is the backpack talent protector. The hazard protection rolls aren't really a requirement, it just helps mitigate some of the bleed that you get from being hit with mortars, although Foundry is pretty good at just mitigating that in its entirety. For skills, we have the Bulwark Shield and the Artificer Hive. I would argue the Artificer Hive is absolutely paramount here, simply just because it allows you to tank so much more. For the pistol, I use the Card TDI custom for the extra skill tier, which puts me at skill tier 2, for the Artificer Hive when I have my shield out. If not, and you're pretty good at maintaining and stacking it, Liberty is also a very good way to go. However, I like running the custom TDI simply just because it then allows me to use Ravenous when needed, just because it does quite a lot of hefty damage against those pesky chungers. This is now phase 4. The first chunger will come out of the right side carriage, it will then go left and then right and then left again. It is at this point where there's going to be a lot more things going on, so do keep an eye on the health bars on the right hand side. You can see I've already procced Kaiser with Vanguard, he's about to die. Hopefully that gives enough time for the healer to get to him. However, the big point here really is, due to how much is going on, is you, unless you're in like a very well organized team, you are going to be solely responsible for dealing with the chungers. At this point, everyone else is going to have a lot to deal with and a lot on their plate, so being able to deal with those chungers quickly and cleanly is going to be a huge plus side to your team. On occasion, you might be able to call someone to you to help out, but the chances of this really happening are going to be few and far between, unless, of course, like I said, you do have a very well organised team. This here is a perfect example of the fact that I'm at a 100%, but I can't interact. You can see there it says unavailable, so I just have to wait for it to become available. Now, depending on how you rotate your shield and your armour, as well with Vanguard, you can utilise the bonus armour you have, as well as the armour that you just naturally have anyway with the armour regen, to maintain your shield. Don't assume you can sit there with your shield out and be this bastion of hope. You will need to rotate your skills, as well as utilising things like Ravenous to help you stay alive. It's another reason I run Ravenous. As the bonus armour from Ravenous is whittled away, this goes towards healing my shield. Now, it is at this point where I do want to mention that the talent I run on my TDI card custom is Reformation for the extra 30% repair skill on headshot. I could potentially be very wrong, but this does seem to affect the healing that the Artificer Hive gives my Bulwark Shield. So on occasion, I'll just headshot something with my pistol, and the next time my Hive ticks, I get an extra 30%, which is near enough a full heal on my shield, which does allow me to be ridiculously tanky. Again, rotating between armour and shield to make the maximum benefit of the Foundry set. It is at this point where I need to do a quick tangent really, and that is going to be the new Cavalier set coming up. I'm not sure if anyone tested it in a raid. I did test it damage mitigation versus Foundry's armor regen, and it's kind of hard to actually test because it really is going to be dependent on how much damage you are actually going to take, which is going to be different for every single raid you go through. I did find that if you were taking, let's say, medium levels of damage, Cavalier did seem to be better. However, if you were taking lower levels of damage, Foundry performed better, and if you were taking higher amounts of damage, Foundry also performed better, but it did also require you to be a little bit more mindful of your rotation. Simply just because you're able to mitigate damage, you can mitigate all you want in the world, it's still only about 40-50% depending on your build, which still means you're going to be taking a good amount of damage, and due to the fact that Foundry is better at healing that damage than it is mitigating that damage, I did find that if you were taking a lot of damage, you were able to take a lot of damage for longer using Cavalier, but eventually the healing just was not able to keep up with the amount of damage, whereas if you rotate Foundry correctly, Foundry is very much able to take pretty much all the punishment you can throw at it. Now, I didn't get to test Cavalier with Stagger Tank, and that is something that I am looking forward to actually testing, because I kind of feel like in a raid setting, Cavalier would be very good as a Stagger Tank, and for me, that is probably the way that I will end up going. But for the moment, this rounds off my nice little raid walkthrough. I've done DPS, healer and tank for all bosses in the Iron Horse raid. I do hope this has helped people, or maybe enlightened people in a different way to do it. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.